The latest efforts, the state says, ended with 120 undocumented people arrested.
For 19 a.m. Highway 52, southern Minnesota. The road was a ribbon of black ice cutting through the dark, frozen landscape. The temperature was 30 degrees below zero. In this kind of cold, the air itself feels solid, and the only sound for miles was the groaning of diesel engines fighting the wind. A semi-truck carrying the logo of North Star, hauling a major regional carrier trusted across the Midwest, slowed to the shoulder. The air brakes hissed, shattering the silence. Behind it, a Minnesota state trooper pulled over, red and blue lights pulsing softly against the snowbanks. To the passing cars, this looked like a standard commercial safety inspection. It was the kind of routine check conducted thousands of times every winter to keep the icy highway safe. There were no sirens. There was no high-speed pursuit. Just a trooper, a flashlight, and a clipboard. But as the trooper began the technical inspection, the atmosphere shifted. He noticed subtle discrepancies. The driver's logbook didn't match the weight distribution on the axles. The bill of lading listed insulation materials, but the trailer sat too heavy on its suspension. The trooper called for backup. When inspectors arrived and drilled into the interior sidewall of the trailer, they didn't hit fiberglass or foam. The drill bit punched through a false panel and hit a void. They peeled back the wall. Inside was a concealed compartment running the entire length of the chassis. It was packed with vacuum-sealed packages of cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl stacked with industrial precision.
Record-breaking arrest, the alert observation from a driver that led to police seizing 350 pounds of cocaine.
At that moment, the officers thought they had caught a rogue smuggler. They were wrong. As they detained the driver and began to process the vehicle, the suspect didn't ask for a lawyer. He didn't demand a phone call. He looked at the federal agents who had arrived on the scene and asked for a deal. The information he gave them in the next hour would turn a traffic stop into a national security crisis. He wasn't working alone. He was part of a specific group, 83 drivers operating inside the company. They were primarily Somali nationals, and they functioned as a ghost fleet. They drove identical trucks with modified trailers. They drove fixed routes through 5 states, and they answered to a command structure that had nothing to do with the corporate office. The driver revealed that North Star Hauling wasn't just a trucking company. It was a Trojan horse. For years, North Star had been a pillar of the regional economy. They moved consumer goods, industrial materials, and heating supplies across Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, South Dakota, and Illinois. Their trucks were a common sight on the interstate. But the investigation triggered by the Highway 52 stop revealed that North Star was actually 2 companies operating under one logo. Federal investigators discovered that while regular drivers chased demand and fluctuated their routes based on weather and fuel costs, these 83 men followed rigid, unchangeable paths. They drove the same corridors, stopped at the same terminals, and operated almost exclusively at night. The genius of the operation was in its camouflage. They weren't hiding in unmarked vans or shady rental trucks. They were hiding in plain sight, driving the same branded 18-wheelers as legitimate employees. This is what military planners call parallel logistics. They use the cover of legitimate commerce, moving pallets of food or steel to mask the movement of narcotics and weapons in the false walls of their trailers.
Semi-driver noticed that somebody had tampered with his trailer.
By the time the sun came up over Highway 52, the truck had been towed to a secure federal facility. The driver was in a holding cell. And in Washington, D.C., the Department of Justice was realizing that a gradual response would fail. If they arrested one driver, the rest would vanish. The network would scramble. The money would disappear. The decision was made at the highest levels of Homeland Security. They wouldn't take them down one by one. They would take them down all at once. If you support the brave men and women of ICE and the FBI who protect our highways, hit the like button and comment. Hold the line below. The investigation that followed the traffic stop peeled back layers of a criminal enterprise that stunned regulators. It wasn't just about moving drugs. It was about moving money. North Star Hauling wasn't just moving freight. It was a financial pipeline. Investigators linked the company's ownership to a web of shell entities with no clear commercial purpose. Funds didn't flow through traditional banks. They moved through informal transfer networks known as HULA. Unlicensed, untraceable, and fragmented. Forensic accountants found that over a 3-year period, more than 85 million had been transferred out of the United States to accounts in East Africa and the Middle East. The transfers were structured to look like small family remittances broken down into amounts that wouldn't trigger federal alerts. But when aggregated, the data showed a river of cash leaving the American Midwest. This money wasn't just profit. It was funding operations abroad that had nothing to do with trucking.
To rid our cities of the harmful plague of drug trafficking organizations and gang violence.
But the most terrifying part of the investigation was how the cartel used the environment itself. They weaponized the weather. Analysts overlaying the ghost fleet activity with historical weather data found a chilling pattern. The network's activity spiked during the harshest months of winter. They moved their largest shipments during blizzards, ice storms, and sub-zero cold snaps. Why? Because they knew that during severe weather, law enforcement resources are diverted. State troopers are busy responding to accidents and cars and ditches. Roadside inspections drop significantly because it's simply too dangerous to keep officers outside for long periods. The cartel had turned the Minnesota winter into a strategic advantage. They waited for the storms to move their most valuable contraband. The operation to stop them was named Northern Breaker. Across 5 states, SWAT teams, FBI agents, and IC tactical units began mobilizing. They positioned units outside freight terminals in Chicago, warehouses in Minneapolis, and transfer hubs in Sioux Falls. The objective was total containment, secure the fleets, freeze the accounts, and arrest every member of the Ghost Fleet in a single synchronized strike. As the sun set on the eve of the operation, the Midwest was hit by another massive winter storm. Snow began to fall heavy and fast, burying the highways. But this time, the federal agents weren't retreating from the cold. They were waiting in it. The storm wasn't a hindrance. It was the signal. Federal planners knew that North Star's Ghost Fleet would be active tonight. Surveillance drones tracked dozens of trucks leaving the yards, pushing north toward the Canadian border and south toward distribution hubs in Chicago. At 2 a.m., the command center gave the green light. Operation Northern Breaker was live. This wasn't a standard police raid where a single team hits a single house. This was a synchronized takedown across a geographic area larger than France.
Approximately $16 million worth of cocaine was found in the back of a semi earlier this year.
In Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, South Dakota, and Illinois, tactical teams began to move on Interstate 94. A convoy of 3 North Star trucks was battling whiteout conditions. The drivers checked their mirrors and saw flashing lights cutting through the snow. They thought it was just snow plows clearing the lane. They were wrong. A phalanx of state patrol cruisers and unmarked federal SUVs executed a rolling box maneuver. They surrounded the 18-wheelers, slowing down in formation to force the massive trucks onto the frozen shoulder. The drivers didn't even have time to reach for their encrypted radios. By the time the air brakes hissed locked, tactical officers were already climbing the cab steps, weapons drawn. There was no negotiation. The drivers were pulled out of their warm cabs into the biting wind and zip-tied against the icy asphalt. We are tracking the court cases for every driver and executive involved in this network. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the updates. Simultaneously, the main assault was unfolding at North Star Hauling's headquarters in Minneapolis. An armored Bearcat vehicle smashed through the chain-link perimeter fence, the metal screaming as it gave way. 2 columns of FBI SWAT operators flooded the yard. They weren't there to serve paperwork. They were there to secure a crime scene that spanned 3 acres. Flashbangs detonated in the loading bay. The concussive blasts stunning the night shift crew. Federal agents down. Get down. As agents swept the facility, clearing room after room, they realized the true sophistication of the operation. In the dispatch office, they didn't find standard logistics software. They found a dual system setup. One screen showed the legitimate freight consumer goods, heating supplies, timber. The other screen, encrypted and accessible only by a select few managers, tracked the Ghost Fleet. It showed the real-time locations of the 83 specific trucks involved in the conspiracy. It tracked payment schedules that had nothing to do with shipping rates. It was the nerve center of a shadow company operating inside a legal one. But the physical evidence in the warehouse was even more damning. In Bay 4, investigators found a trailer undergoing maintenance. Panels had been stripped away, revealing the engineering secret behind the network. The chassis had been modified with hydraulic false walls. To a casual observer or a standard X-ray, the trailer looked empty or full of legal pallets. But behind the false wall was a void space capable of holding 500 kilograms of contraband. In this specific trailer, the void wasn't empty. Agents pulled out crate after crate. First came the narcotics bricks of fentanyl wrapped in carbon paper to defeat K9 units.
350 pounds.
Yeah, that is the amount of illegal drugs Arkansas State Police has taken off the street this week alone.
Then came the cash stacks of vacuum, sealed U.S. currency bundled for export. And finally, they found the weapons. Crates labeled as machine parts were cracked open to reveal upper receivers for assault rifles, high-capacity magazines, and disassembled suppressors. This confirmed the darkest theory of the investigation. The network wasn't just taking drugs in, they were moving weapons out. The supply chain worked in both directions. While the headquarters fell, the drag net was tightening across the Midwest. In Sioux Falls, South Dakota, a transfer hub disguised as a repair shop was raided by IC Homeland Security investigations. Inside, they found floor safes containing millions in cash and ledgers detailing transfers to hollow brokers in East Africa. In Chicago, a North Star truck parked at a quiet industrial lot was surrounded. The driver attempted to flee on foot across the frozen lot, but was tackled by a K9 unit. Inside his cab, agents found a satellite phone and a map with marked drop zones that had no correlation to any commercial delivery route. By 5 a.m., the reports were flooding back to the command center. The scope of the arrests was staggering. All 83 targeted drivers were in custody. The dispatchers were detained. The mechanics who built the false walls were in handcuffs. North Star Hauling, a company that had operated for years as a respected regional carrier, effectively ceased to exist before the sun came up. The immediate economic impact was chaotic. Thousands of legitimate shipments were stranded. Food distribution routes were disrupted. Heating fuel deliveries were delayed. The shutdown of a major carrier sent shockwaves through the regional supply chain. But as the forensic accountants unlocked the company's financial drives, the full scale of the betrayal became clear. The 85 million investigators had initially tracked was a conservative estimate. The Ghost Fleet hadn't just been a side operation. It was the financial engine of a transnational laundering scheme. The shutdown was immediate and total. Federal authorities froze every bank account, seized every vehicle, and padlocked every terminal across 5 states. This case forced a reckoning in Washington. Operation Northern Breaker wasn't just a law enforcement victory. It was a national security wake-up call. It exposed a critical vulnerability in the heart of the United States. We often think of national security as protecting borders or airports. But this investigation proved that the trucks driving next to us on the highway, the vehicles bringing us our food and fuel, can be weaponized. For the 83 drivers, the warehouse managers, and the architects of the Ghost Fleet, the road has ended. They're facing federal charges ranging from narcotics, trafficking, and money laundering to conspiracy against the United States. Operation Northern Breaker proved that no matter how sophisticated the camouflage, no matter how deep the snow, the truth leaves tracks. And when federal agencies coordinate their power, there is no place to hide. Stay vigilant.